talking with Oni Logan, the lead singer of Dio Disciples and Lynch Mob. Now, Oni, I'd like to first ask you a little bit about Lynch Mob, because I know Lynch Mob's getting ready to release a new Unplugged EP. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Lynch Mob, the Sugar Hill Sessions, was recorded in Houston at a very old vintage studio with lots of history to the studio. We had flown out there to do the video for the EP prior to that, which was the Sound Mountain Sessions EP, which is an electric full-on band EP, which we have a video out for that on YouTube, and the title of the song is called Slow Drag. It's done very well as far as views. I think it's up in the 90,000s right about now. We toured behind it. We completed our cycle for that. At the same time, we managed to do an acoustic set, 4 songs with Brian Tichy, and Robbie Crane, and of course George, myself. And it's about to come out. I think it's already been pre-ordered. It's on site for pre-order right now. And I just talked to Joe at Rat Pack, who is the owner of the label, president of the label, and he said that that it's doing really good right off the bat.
Okay, and let me ask you, Oni, going back in time, about 1990 when the first Lynch Mob album came out, I know right before that you were briefly with a band called Ferrari, which was, of course, fronted by keel guitar player Mark Ferrari. How did you get the offer to join Lynch Mob and hook up with George?
Well, George was looking for a singer coming out of the Dawkins episode when they had just finished and they decided to go their separate ways, and he was looking for a singer. And I guess he was making calls around, and one of the persons that he had spoken to was John Alderete, who was in Racer X as the bassist for Racer X, and now he plays with Mars Volta, out of all bands, which is a very exciting creative band and sort of contemporary to the sound of today, and quite, like I said, experimental. And so John said, there's this new guy that we had auditioned because they had offered me the job to be the singer for Racer X.
Oh, wow, okay.
After Jeff Martin had left. Paul Gilbert now was already out of the band, and they had this other guitar player by the name of Chris Arvon. But Bruce was in there, so was Scott Travis, and of course John. And so they offered me the job. I came out and auditioned. They offered me the job, and then shortly after, about a month, later, I went back, of course, to Florida, and thought about the idea of maybe coming out and doing something with Racer X. And then shortly after, I got another phone call from Mark, and that came through a rock editor for Rock Scene Magazine, which was a physical magazine.
Yeah, I remember back then, yes, yeah.
Back in the day, and her name was Beth Nussbaum, and she had recorded some live performances of me touring around up and down the coast over there on A1A in Florida, and had sent it in just to Mark, and the next thing I know is, I'm getting a call from Mark Ferrari and asking me if I would like to come out and have a go with his new lineup, and I did, and I thought it was a great little band.
Wow, yeah.
And so I took on the position.
And from that, I understand there's a little bit of controversy because you went straight from there from the Ferrari band to Lynch Mob. Back then, I remember a lot of controversy about people saying that, making the claim George had stolen you from that band. But what's the real story of how you hooked up with George?
Well, not necessarily. Look, George was at the top of his game. Everybody, knows that.
Yes.
A brilliant guitar player. Just came out of a multi-platinum band. And it was just an offer I couldn't refuse. To be quite honest with you, it would have put me, with Ferrari, not saying that we wouldn't have been successful, but this sort of put me on a plateau, right out on the plate for millions of rock fans to hear this new singer. And so, after doing a lot of thinking about it, it wasn't easy for me because the Ferrari guys were my brothers. We were all the same age, pretty much, and great guys. I got along with them great, and it wasn't an easy decision. But at the end of the day, I had written 2 or 3 tracks with George just to test the waters, and one of them being Wicked Sensation, which was, I believe, our second or first song that we wrote together. And I just knew, I just had this gut feeling that this was the place that I needed to be, and it was with George Lynch.
Okay, and let me ask you, you're originally from Florida, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Okay, and I was curious, who were your musical influences when you were growing up?
Well, of course, the classic rock singers, well, one being Robert Plant, the second one being Ronnie James Dio, third being Paul Rogers, Rod Stewart when he was with Jeff Beck, Ian Gillan, you know, those guys, and some blues guys that I had later got into after hearing about them through how much of an influence they had on my peers, you know, on my favorites. And so, yeah, those are the guys.
And so let me ask, when going back to Lynch Mob, when you guys first got together back around 1990, I assume that you knew the guys from, you know, Mick and George from Dokken. Were you much of a Dokken fan, or?
Yeah, you know, Under Lock and Key, and actually Tooth and Nail, which it would be so ironic years later that I would be singing that song Tooth and Nail. But when I first heard of them, they were on the FM station, and they had just released Tooth and Nail, which I thought was a balls out, good hook-laden rock album. And after that, they came out with the more polished album of Under Lock and Key, which had some great commercial, you know, and good chemistry songs in that. So yes, I was very much familiar with them. And as a matter of fact, I caught the tail end of one of their songs when I went to see them as a young guy, opening up for Ronnie James Dio.
Okay, wow. And let me ask you, talking about that time in Lynch Mob, I was curious, when you first got together with George, was there a conscious effort, not necessarily to like sound just like Dokken, because of course anybody who hears Lynch Mob, it's kind of I describe it as hard rock metal with blues influence. Was there a real effort to kind of have a different sound than Dokken?
You know, George comes from those classic rock guitar players, the Jeff Beck, the Jimi Hendrix, those type of players. So I think he just wanted to get back to some of his roots as to the guitar, sort of stylistically guitar playing that he enjoyed when he was coming up. And at that time, there was a big resurgence of blues-based rock and roll. Mm-hmm. You know, of course, you know, it was, you know, at that period, you know, you would see more of these, and I think it just caught his attention, and he knew what I was about, and so there was no pretentious effort to say, okay, we're going to write this type of song. We just got into a room, him and I, and he would just throw some riffs at me, and the next thing you know, we have Mick in the studio and kicking out some grooves, and then I put my icing on the cake, and that's how it naturally progressed, and that's what happened. The Lynch Mob Wicked Sensation album was just pure, getting in there and just jamming, really.
I mean, that must have been an exciting time in your life. I mean, like you're saying, Lynch Mob was kind of your launching pad. What was it like, you know, going from maybe playing little tiny club bands before that to, you know, playing all around the world in the big arenas and that?
It was frightening.
Yeah.
No, it was, you know, I could honestly say it was quite frightening. You know, I mean, I had been doing the club circuit for some years, and to go from that to Japan and play in a large auditorium and, you know, go to these foreign places like Osaka and Hiroshima and the adulation and because of their history with being successful, it was a lot. It was quite a bit. It was shocking. You know, it took me a little while to get used to it, and you know, going to Europe, opening up for Queensryche on their Operation Mindcrime tour, this is a whole different level, you know what I mean? Sonically, it sounds different. It sounds massive. It sounds, and, you have to, sometimes it's a little difficult to adjust to it, but, and it took me a while.
Okay, and of course, Wicked Sensation being your first album with the band, I'd like to ask, how happy were you with the album, when it came out, and did it come out, when you heard it for the first time? What was that experience like for you?
It was amazing. When I heard it for the first time, Max Norman, who had produced and engineered Ozzy's, I believe it was the one with Crazy Train.
Blizzard of Oz, I think, yes.
Blizzard of Oz, yeah, that's right. So I was very familiar with his work, but I didn't know him at all. But he was a big part of that sound. He knew how to push those faders, not just at the peak. You know what I mean? In the red. You know what I mean? He really knew how to get great sounds. We worked on the drums. We recorded it. Recorded it at 101 Studios in North Hollywood, where the next band that came in to do their album was Metallica, and they did the album Black there.
Okay.
So it was a nice, great studio. We had the luxury of having time to do it. We had a lot of money behind it from Elektra, and he was perfect for us. I mean, when I sat back and listened to it, I was like, in amazement. Beyond that, hearing it for the first time on the radio when I just had, and I was driving in Phoenix out in the desert, all of a sudden you hear your song played. It was bone chilling, to say the least. I mean, I had to stop and pull over, and it was just like, it's unbelievable how you feel as a young fellow. I was in my mid-20s, and I was in awe of everything. It was really, really a good time, and I thought the album sounded perfect. Everybody has their favorite choices of songs and stuff like that. I would have to say my least favorite song was Bed of Roses, which is more of on the commercial side, but I knew that they needed that, that one song. But the rest of the album was just full tilt, whatever we wanted to do.
Yeah, of course, a lot of fans back then were very excited, with George and Mick coming right out of Dokken at the time, up with this great new band, and a lot of fans at the same time were kind of disappointed because after one great album, you left. Why did you leave after only one album? Was it kind of a little too much too soon, or?
Yeah, reverting back to that, I never really got fully comfortable at that point. I think I may have sort of lost it a little bit. I wasn't really taking care of myself, and I was having too much of a good time, I think. But beyond that, it was brutal to go up there and play at the volume we played, and to sustain yourself and keep yourself as a vocalist. Sometimes you need the band to understand that levels need to come down, and I really didn't get that from George. He was known as a guitar hero, so it was like guitars on 11. And I got kind of sick of that, so quite honestly, it was a mixture of all those combinations together. Mostly it was the annoyance of it's just impossible to sing at this level. I'm not getting enough monitors. We didn't have in-ears back then. Now they're sort of my saving grace sometimes. But it was just overboard, and I got fed up, and I just said, you know what, I'm not into it. So I left.
Okay, and what did you think of the guy they brought in after you, Robert Mason, to do the second album? Were you a big fan of his?
I never heard of him. I had heard that he hired a singer. I knew he was from Jersey. They also invited me back in the band while they were cutting vocals, and that was, I would say a little disrespectful towards Robert. But, I almost came back. I was invited by the producer for that album to come in and take a listen, which I went in with my manager at the time, Wendy Dio, and we went in and had a listen, and I thought, this is not the Lynch Mob, being that there are horns, There was much more of a polished sound. The song sounded sort of commercialized to me a bit more. And I just thought, no, it's not really where my head's at, So I declined, and I ended up doing an album with Rowan Robertson for Atlantic Records under the band name Violet's Demise.
Okay, that's the next thing I was going to ask you about. And how did you and Rowan hook up?
Through Wendy Dio.
Oh, okay.
He had just came out of Dio, and I met Rowan when he was just a young lad, strapping lad of 16 years of age, when he just came over to the Americas, and we became instantly great buddies, and it was just inevitable, so we just started writing some songs together, recorded a demo of 3 songs, and Atlantic heard it, and they said, let's do an album. So that's how that happened.
Okay, and of course, I got to ask, was that done after he was out of Dio or while he was in Dio?
Oh, no, he was already, out of Dio, yeah.
Okay, and of course, I've seen a CD of that released as Logan Robertson.
Yeah.
And
we put that underneath that name because of logistical, contractual things. So we ended up putting it out, and it was a high sought album over the internet, and we're actually working on getting all the rights for it so we can put it on iTunes and everything. So it's been a long process of getting all the right paperwork together, but we have a little fan base with that, and it will get re-released at some point again.
I think it's I heard it. I got to tell people who haven't heard it. It's a great little collection of tunes, and I would love to see it get like proper release, like you're saying. And would you ever consider working with Rowan, or like maybe doing another album if?
Yeah, absolutely. We're very close to this day, and we from time to time we get together and we'll put something together, a little piece of music, and so that's in the works too as well. So I could, with this type of music, the Violet's Demise album, and I will call it the Violet's Demise album because there was another two members involved. That was Scott Coogan, who plays drums, who played on the Smoke and Mirrors album with the Lynch Mob after Mick, and he also plays drums for Ace Frehley and Lita Ford lately. Was his latest, and there was this other musician called Spencer Campbell.
Okay.
And he played with many different artists, anywhere from Sheryl Crow to
that's all right.
A little blank here, but he's a well-known musician in Nashville and plays bass and studio work and all that stuff. So we had a young Spencer Campbell, and we had the Scott Coogan, who was very young. He was just 21 years old when I had asked him to join the band. Much of the same process. We got into a room, but we wanted to do something a little darker, a little more adventurous, and the chemistry between the four of us worked really well together. Though, the nucleus of it and the germ of it all started with me and Rowan hashing out riffs, and I would go, oh, I like that part, oh, that's a nice part, that kind of thing, and then I would work on some melodies. And, with that kind of music, it's very euphoric, it conjures up images, you have to be in that right headspace to really enjoy it and understand that Violet's Demise album. It's not your common thread rock album where you're singing about your everyday matters of the heart and mind or political issues or whatever. It's sort of music for a stream of consciousness. And so, with that being said, it takes time to make albums like that, and really nobody's making albums anymore, but we're going to do an album together, of course, at some point, for sure. Okay,
and the last thing I want to ask you about the Violet's Demise project was, a lot of time, at the time when you guys were getting it together, there's a lot of hype, and then all of a sudden, you kind of got dropped from the label, I understand, because of the whole grunge scene and that. Was the label, even though they never...
The label was in turmoil. From what we had from the producer, Dave Jordan, is that the head of the label at that time, he ended up going to another label, and he was sort of our main guy there. And it wasn't a crisis, so we sort of got put on the back burner with the promise of a release date, and then they would say, we're going to release it at this time and at this time, until we finally said, you know what, we're going somewhere else. And that's when everything kind of just went still. So they loved the album. They knew we were that type of band. They never said you need to write a commercial song or anything. We were pretty much on the cusp of a new sound. At the same time, the Seattle sound was coming over, which hand in hand they're pretty much similar. And they're, we did the album with Dave Jordan, who just did Dirt from Alice in Chains.
Okay.
So we were in the same wheelhouse, so to speak. But for those reasons of changes in the record company, it was pushed back until we said we're going somewhere else, and we had the option to. So we like I said, that's when it all came to us still.
And do you have any idea, since they've never released it, why they're holding on to the rights or being so difficult about signing the rights over to you?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was curious, since they've never released the music, have you been given any reasons why they're being so difficult about signing the rights over to that?
Well, there was quite a bit of money involved.
Okay.
There was money involved with publishing. Those are the sort of things that we had to logistically get everything straight.
Okay, see. Okay. Okay, and then, of course, now getting back to Lynch Mob briefly, I'd like to ask, your next project with them was the Smoke and Mirrors album. So, talk a little bit about what your thought process was about going back to the band and how the offer came up.
I thought it was great, to get back with George to do Smoke and Mirrors. We had a phenomenal bass player. We all know him as Marco Mendoza. We had Scott Coogan, who played on the Violet's Demise album.
So did you bring Scott into Lynch Mob?
Sorry?
Did you bring Scott into the Lynch Mob?
I did. I brought him into the Lynch Mob because I knew he was the right guy. Plus, the Lynch Mob requires a certain amount of backup singing because, if you're, as you're familiar with the Wicked Sensation album, there's quite a bit going on backup vocally wise and stuff. So we needed somebody that could sing and play their heart out, and so that's we called Scott in to do it, and basically the same procedure as we had done in the past. We got into a room with Marco and Scott and hashed out ideas, and then I would take those ideas and work them, take them home and work on the melodies and the lyrics and the concept title, what have you.
Okay, and I love the Smoke.
Really good album, actually. It kind of went under the radar, but it's one of those things. There's quite a bit of people that they come up to me from time to time and go, oh, "Great album." It's so unfortunate you put all this work into it.
Yeah,
Nobody's heard it.
That's kind of what I was going to say. On one hand, I've heard the whole album and the Smoke and Mirrors, and I think it's a great album. I think maybe because anybody listening to it's kind of got a, like you said, classic blues, hard rock feel to it, kind of almost 70-ish style music. Whereas I think the only complaint that some people may have had is that there wasn't more of a cross-section of material. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Nobody's ever told me that. And most of the reviews that came out, I saw a few here in the States, but most of them were in Europe.
Yeah.
The label was a European label, Frontiers. They did a lot of promotion over there. We did, get some nice reviews in Japan about it, but I can see why, the audience would probably want to hear more of what George had, in the past with more of a harder metal sound.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I thought it was a great album, and I love that style of music. I'm just saying, I think maybe that being your first album back with the band, maybe people were expecting, a Wicked Sensation Part 2, but again, it is what it is, and it's a great album. And the last thing,
right. I can see that, and I did hear a little voice in the wind that probably that they were expecting that. Look, like I said, Max Norman space on. They're all as equal, but different rooms, different recording studios, and the luxury of getting those big sounds. The budgets don't allow that anymore.
Yeah, and I think knowing a little bit about Bob Kulick, because I'm a Kiss fan. Interesting thing about him is he's a great producer, and he's actually been more successful, helping other bands with their career. I mean, he's pretty much been like a famed studio musician, but he makes his living now producing other bands and just doing a lot more for them than what he was able to do for his career as far as getting a pretty successful touring band. But he's had his own success because he came from Alice Cooper and Meatloaf. And
absolutely,
and he's helping.
He's got platinum and gold records in the studio, and he's a proven entity. And he's fantastic. He's smart. He's passionate. And I really enjoyed working with Bob and Brett. Brett's a great, engineer. So it was a pleasure.
And let me ask you, it's like you said, you work with Max Norman, for example, on Wicked Sensation. Do you find it different working with a guy like Bob and Brett because they're actual musicians themselves, and so they have kind of a better understanding of what it's like to be in a band?
I do. Yeah, they have an opinion. They'll get the best out of you. They will, not to say that Max didn't, but I mostly did those vocals for Wicked Sensation on my own with an engineer that was local in Phoenix, because he had so much to do with the other guitars and bass and stuff like that. So he said, just run with it, go with it. And so that's how I did the Lynch Mob album, which was to my own liking. And with Bob and Brett, they were very challenging as well, and I enjoyed their input. When somebody has something to say, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. So they were great. They're Bob and Brett, Max Norman, they're all good in my book.
Okay, great. And the last thing I want to ask you about Lynch Mob, because recently I had the opportunity to interview George about his TNN project, and he was talking a little bit about the last Lynch Mob EP, and was kind of talking about that the current state of Lynch Mob is that it's kind of, he says, I never save it, we'll never do it again, but he was telling me a story that he'd offered you, Robbie, and Scott all a piece of a band, and for whatever reason you guys weren't really interested, and you went to do a Dio Disciples, and other guys kind of took a walk, the manager quit on him. What's your take? Do you consider yourself part of Lynch Mob still, or are you guys kind of on a hiatus?
I do.
Okay.
Because I'm part of the sound. He may own the name, but I have a sole purpose in that lineup. However you look at it, he can change a singer, get a different singer, but it's never going to be the Lynch Mob, without, my voice on it.
So I guess what I'm asking is, right here and now, like you said, you guys are getting ready to release a new EP, so I guess that's something. But do you see when he gets done with TNN that you guys might get back together? Because right now, when I last talked to him, he was kind of saying, well, I don't know what the future of Lynch Mob is. The other guys.
Yeah, well, that's just up in the air. We've left it to just give it some space, give it some time. There was a lot going on, and I don't want to be. These are things that are private.
No, I understand.
Private.
I understand.
We are musicians. We've got other aspiring things that we want to do. George, for one, told me that October and November he'd be going out with TNN for dates, and I was like, well, I need to find work. So as fate had it, I got a call from Simon Wright, and he asked me, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm looking for work, and that's why the Lynch Mob sort of got put on the back burner. But George is working on other projects.
Well, again,
I spoke to Robbie the other day, and he's open to doing some dates. We were open to promoting the acoustic EP, which is, but he's busy now. So it's sort of, we just kind of have to find the right time and place.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I myself, I think the fact that you guys are releasing this this unplugged EP is a good sign that it's not the horse isn't totally dead yet, but there's still life in Lynch Mob, which I think is good. And oddly enough, Oni, I've been wanting to interview you for a while, basically since you've been in Dio Disciples, because I got to tell you, I had an opportunity to see the band in Anaheim last, I think it was October, and and that was the first time, shortly after you joined up with the Dio Disciples. And see, I'd always been a fan of yours from Lynch Mob, of course, but I never realized until I seen you Dio Disciples what a powerful voice you have. I mean, of course, I heard you with Lynch Mob, and I thought you were, a decent singer, but I had no idea until I seen you perform with the Dio Disciples, that you had that powerful of a voice. And I think that's one reason people really got to go check the Dio Disciples out.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for the kind words, and I'm having a great time with the guys: Simon Wright, Craig Goldie, Bjorn Engel, Scott Warren, and of course Tim Ripper Owens. He's a masterful voice, and you got to step up when you're singing with a singer like that. And so for me, it's a great honor because Ron was my friend, and he was just a fantastic guy. We were family friends, and what can I tell you? He was like a relic from a different age. His poetry with lyrics, his unstoppable desire to create. The man was always working, and I found that to be one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen out of a vocalist and musician. So it gave me great honor to sit and try to stand in his shoes. And it's tough. It's not easy.
And let me ask you, did you?
Well, there'll never be another Ronnie James Dio.
Yeah, did you meet Ronnie through his wife Wendy? Because you said she was your manager.
Yeah. No, Ronnie's actually the reason why I'm in California. We met in 1989 at one of his shows. I think it was the Sacred Heart show.
Okay.
Sacred Heart tour with Craig and Craig Goldie, and he gave me the time to speak to me because I was an inspiring singer. I made it backstage somehow. I think it was arranged, or I just got back there, but I'm almost thinking that it was arranged because I wouldn't have gotten back. I would have got back through those large security guards that he had. But shortly right after he got off stage, we talked about music and the voice and everything, and the band invited me over to the hotel bar, and we continued talking, and I told him, that I was an inspiring singer, and he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm thinking about coming out to California. And he goes, well, why don't you? And I said, well, I really don't know anybody there. And he goes, well, you do now. And so as fate would have it, I would follow through, with some, the band opportunities. Mark Ferrari came, and then we were managed by Wendy Dio, who ironically managed Ronnie's career for the longest time. So that's how we became friends, and we shared holidays and Christmas and Halloween parties, and he was just a great inspiration for me and a great guy.
And once you got to know Ronnie, I always like to ask people that knew him, is there something that, he taught you, or, a piece of advice he gave you that you've valued all these years, or it's helped you in your career?
Yeah, he gave me a few pieces of advice. It's hard to say because they went on personal levels too, not just,
business, yeah.
Beyond the professional level, the music level, on a personal level, because I had left the business for close to 5 years. I moved to Europe to raise a family out in the country,
Okay.
which I ended up doing a solo album in 2005 in Germany, but it was more of a commercial AOR type thing because there was, that sort of demand for it, and I think I was just appeasing. So Ronnie said, well, why did you do that type of album? Why didn't you keep it heavy? So that's one of many pieces of advice.
Okay.
Okay. But, he was a constant, every time I came, from Europe to visit my parents and my brother and stuff, we'd all get together and stuff. So it was on many levels.
Okay, great.
He was like a father, a brother, that kind of person to me.
And I gotta tell people, like, getting back to Dio Disciples for a minute, because again, I experienced seeing you guys in concert, and it was like nothing I've ever experienced. I mean, even beyond the music and stuff, I mean, it's almost like a spiritual gathering, of all Ronnie's fans, and I think you guys are really the truest form of a tribute band. I mean, you got all these cover bands that play all over, making careers out of other people's music, but Dio Disciples is basically Ronnie's last Dio band, and some of his friends like you and Tim Rip Owens. And I think it's a great.
Speaking for myself and Tim, we grew up on him.
Yeah.
We have a love for the man and a passion for what he'd done, in the past, and the recordings, his voice, everything. And going to his band, there's a deep-rooted love there. They toured the world together. They spent years together. And so it's out of love and it's out of respect for his music to keep his music heard and celebrated, and that's why we're doing it.
And
So
and that's
and so that's why you're probably feeling that sense of some sort of spiritual gospel, rock gospel going on.
Yeah, I mean that's what I tell people is, obviously you guys, are making money doing this, but it's not for a sole purpose of a buck. You can tell, like when you see the performance, that you guys are really, like you said, doing it out of a love for Ronnie, and I mean I remember when I was at that show in Anaheim, and you guys are, and you were singing, what's the Rainbows, Long Live Rock and Roll. I mean, the whole audience was up in there, and everybody was chanting, and it was almost like Electric Church. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
Electric Church, that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
2 words, Electric Church, perfect.
And,
it's that way when we feel it too, hair-raising stuff,
And has there been any talk, because I think for people that don't get a chance to experience it live, it'd be great if you guys were to put out like a live DVD or CD or something like that.
I don't know, that's up to the band and
Wendy.
Wendy.
Okay.
I'm really just stepping in and just being there for them as support, and that's where I'm at with it. They handle all the
business,
and I'm, like I said, we're all friends. We've known each other for many years, but it's their decision, not. I have no say.
I got you. And let me ask you, because I know when you came into the Dio Disciples, they'd had another guy, Toby Jepson. Is he still involved with the project, or are you kind of are you taking over for him, or what's the status on that?
I don't know what their plans are. I think their plans ultimately is to continue having different guest singers.
Okay.
So I'm not completely sure. Although there has been talk of future dates, and they've invited me, and I said yes to them. So I'm just doing my part as long as they need me.
Okay, and of course, I'm sure, like myself, you're a huge Ronnie fan, like you said. But I was curious, is there one area of his music that you're particularly a fan of? Being at Rainbow, Sabbath, Dio.
All of it.
And
all of it.
Okay.
I can't say that I can choose any one of them.
That's great, and even like I first got introduced to Ronnie James Dio, of course, through the Heaven and Hell album, which was Black Sabbath, and I tell people, amazing thing is, as great as the Ozzy era was, what people fail to realize is during the Ozzy era of Sabbath, Geezer Butler writing all the songs, but Ronnie came in and he really, with his lyrics, he took the band to the next level, and like you were saying, he's a real.
His poetic imagery that he uses, and that is a complete different thing from Geezer. Geezer was more fictional, a great reader too, and a great lyricist. Come on,
Yeah.
But Ronnie was coming from a different place.
I mean, Ronnie. Everybody knows about his love of mythology and dragons and stuff.
Oh yeah, of course. He's a well-read man.
So,
and so is Geezer.
Yeah, and so talk about like when you take on a project like this. Again, it's for a guy that's no longer with us, but he's a true legend. Do you have to? I mean, do you go into this like saying you're gonna try to make it your own, or you're gonna I'm gonna do Ronnie proud? I mean, what kind of a mindset do you have to get yourself into?
My mindset is to not waver from what he had done, to try to stay true to the melodies as best as to my ability that I can, because these songs are so permanently ingrained in so many, in the masses of the rock and roll people throughout the globe, that you can't just do your own thing. You have to stay true to the song and with, to the best of your ability. Of course, sometimes it's hard to do it every night, but we try, so I do what I sing the song as Ron had sung it. I try to, at least.
Okay, now I was curious, how do you split the songs up as far as which songs you sing and which songs? Is it just a matter who's more capable of singing each individual song?
No, the person who, like for this Monsters of Rock cruise, they had hired another great singer, Mark Bowles, who used to sing for Inday years ago. And so he's actually doing Tim Ripper's part.
Okay.
And that's the way they designed it. Craig designed it that way, possibly for what works best for each singer. Although, we may change it up at times.
And talk a little bit about the cruise that you guys are getting ready to leave for, and how many days and where you guys are going on the cruise and that.
Yeah, we're going to, we leave in the morning at dawn at 3:30 in the morning tonight.
Wow.
And we're going into Fort Lauderdale. I think we're going to Coco Island first, and then we're going to Nassau. Once we arrive there, we'll be doing the silent auction, also meet and greets. There's going to be the stand up and shout fundraiser. There's a lot going on for the Dio Disciples and for the Cancer Foundation on this particular boat cruise. And we're going out for 4 days, and it's going to be a great rock and roll adventure with many great bands.
Let me ask you, Simon Wright, he's a phenomenal drummer, and of course he was Ronnie's good friend and right-hand man for many years. I was curious, I know he's also now involved in Jeff Tate's Queensryche. So when he's busy doing that, do you think you guys will have to get another drummer, or you wait till he's available?
Oh, absolutely not. He is the drummer for the Dio Disciples permanently.
That's what I figured.
There's no other drummer.
That's what I figured. So
that could take his place for that. He knows how to play those songs, and there's so much history and so much sweat in those arrangements that it's incredible. He's a phenomenal drummer, and nobody could think of replacing him.
Yeah, that's why I asked that, because like I said, I know he's Ronnie's good friend and right-hand man for many years. I mean, he was in Dio probably longer than even Vinny a piece.
Yeah.
And when I think of Dio, those are the two guys I think of, and that's the other thing I want. Do you have any thoughts about the other kind of Dio tribute going around, which is Vinny and Vivian and Jimmy and Klotchno, which I think we're calling Last in Line?
I would probably say I don't even have any thoughts about it. I mean, as long as Ronnie's music is being heard, I think, as long as we can keep that passion going and keep that wheel spinning, I think that's the positive. Mm-hmm. I can't see it as a negative.
No, I
know some people like to tear it apart and analyze this, and they're doing it for this and not for this and all that. But to be honest with you, as long as his music's being heard in all four corners of the world, I think it's great.
And do you have any concerns about when the Dio Disciples coming in town that they'll be playing shows around your guys' schedule, or do you think you'd be able to happily coexist?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
The one that's going to be, what everybody's interested in coming to see it'll be, obviously it's not an ideal situation, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not looking to start any wars here. It's just that even from a fan point of view, my personal views this, like you said, I don't think there's nothing with either band doing this, but my viewpoint is this, like I was saying, Dio Disciples is, basically Craig Goldie, Scott Warren, and Simon, which is basically Ronnie's surviving band members, and then some friends like you. And even just from seeing you guys perform in Anaheim, I can say, like, again, although you guys are making a living, because you got to make a living, but you're not doing it solely to make a buck. It's really out of a love for Ronnie. I think with the last in line, a lot of people are kind of concerned, not so, mainly because for years Vivian Campbell had nothing kind to say about Ronnie, and and he tried to even distance himself from Dio for music for several years, and I think people are kind of questioning, well, why are you doing this now? But again, it is what it is, and so that's kind of my view on it. But again, that's just my personal take on the situation, and so.
Yeah, okay, I could see that being quite good.
Okay.
Accurate thought.
Yeah.
But we look. Those songs are so well crafted. The majority, all, I would say, it's just a pleasure to play those songs. They're so well crafted tunes and classic rock songs. I mean, who would not want to play those songs in front of an audience?
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, the thing you guys are been promoting is a very beast of DO2 Greatest Hits collection, and I've told people, the great thing I think about the collection of songs is it's kind of almost like having a new Dio album, because a lot of those songs, people didn't give them a fair listen the first time around, and I think since Ronnie's passing, you put out this great collection, maybe it'll give people finally a chance to really give these songs the listen they deserve. And so, what kind of response have you gotten from the songs on that album when you guys perform them in live?
Yeah, good. I mean, it's all been positive. We're in the electric church, as you said, and I think, for me, it was a bit nerving doing, but, Craig and Simon wanted to do it, which is, it's a song, it's just a piano piece that was written for Angry Machines.
Yeah.
And it's called
This Is Your Life?
This Is Your Life. And people, Ronnie never performed that live, you know what I mean? So, but, Craig and Simon thought it was a sentimental thing, and to introduce it that way, that this song had never been performed before, and it brought me to tears to listen to that song, that piece of music, and, to try to keep up with that. His vocal that he had done was so good, and the emotion that he had done, and it's just a small little piece, but it's all been positive, I mean, they're willing to accept new
material
that are,
yeah.
maybe have never played before.
Let me ask you on that song in particular, because again, for me, when I seen you guys perform it in concert, that was one of the highlights, because like you said, that particular song, when you guys perform it live, it's taken on a new life, I think, than just the original album version. Because I mean, for one thing, it was just you and Scott up there performing. So like, whose idea was that, just to kind of make it just you and the keyboard player up on stage?
Well, for one thing, it was recorded that way, and the guy said, the rest of the guys said, go out and make Ronnie proud, and we tried our best, and we got a great reaction from that song. Yeah,
I think you accomplished what you set out, because it does a couple of things. If anybody sees you perform that particular song live, it shows, first of all, keyboards do not necessarily suck in rock music. There's a place for it, and I think that also anybody sees you guys perform that, just with you and Scott up on stage. Also, the song, I think, has taken on a new meaning, since Ronnie has since passed on, than what it originally was.
Yeah, it's just the miracle of music. It never seems to amaze me.
Yeah, and so it's been great talking to you, Oni, but I know you got to get ready for your cruise tomorrow. So before I let you go, besides the new,
I've got to. I actually got to still pack a little bit, and we got to be at the airport, I think, at 4 a.m.
Well, so the last thing I was going to ask you is,
it was a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Really nice talking to you. I'm glad that I spoke to somebody that has so much knowledge about and love for Ron.
Oh yeah, no doubt, and thanks for doing what you're doing with the Dio Disciples. And before I let you go, I just want to ask, besides the new Unplugged Lynch Mob CD. Do you have anything else you're working on besides the Dio Disciples?
Not at the moment. I'm just, kind of keeping it open. I did reach out to a few musicians. I don't want to say anything at this moment because, you know how things are, but there's a couple of people that I've talked to about maybe doing a little project. But I'll be sure to let you know. Maybe I, can let Chip know.
I'd appreciate
when
that.
My deal is going down. So as far as for the moment right now, it's the Deal Disciples, but there are other things that are possibly going to happen.
Okay, well, I would appreciate that, and that's what I was going to say. Keep my contact info, and this interview will probably go up in sometime in early May. I'll let Chip know the minute it does. And
please do, man.
And it's been great talking to you, and so anytime you want to do this, please get in touch with me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you again.
Will do, Jason, man. Thanks a lot, man. Great talking to you, and hope to see you sometime soon out at a show.
Okay, yeah, and you guys are going to be playing in the U.S. besides the cruise anytime soon?
There's no dates that have been booked besides the cruise. At this moment, there has been talk about South America, and that's sort of talk at the moment.
Okay, well,
but, I'm sure we'll be, you're in contact with Chip and the Nietzsche family and everything, so.
Okay, well, you get some sleep and enjoy your cruise, and best of luck to you with everything you do.
Thanks, Jason, man. All the best.
Okay, bye-bye. Take care.